Right, okay, good morning. It's week 27, day 4 on my slow rehabilitation to getting stuff done. 4 for 4. Let's see if we can make it 7 this week, which would mean that the way I make the what are they called? The title screen or the thumbnail, the correct thumbnail should come up, and I make those all at the beginning of the week when I'm doing Monday's video. So yeah, here we are in the woods, proper Manchester weather. It's beginning to rain a little bit. 24th of October, and I'm looking forward to my day off tomorrow. Let's see if I can try recording a game of Fallout 4. Maybe I'll upload the recording and then I'll attempt to live stream. So maybe that can be a social thing we do some Friday nights. So maybe if you're in the right hemisphere or the right time zone, you can tune in and watch that. So yeah, Socialist Fallout 4. But before we get into that, I think what I want to do is just go over a few comments that I've had since yesterday. Well, a comment I've had since yesterday and a review in a little way of the first half of the book about utopia that I linked to in yesterday's programme, and I will link to again because it's bloody good. Utopia for Realists, and I can't remember the author, which is terrible of me, but there's only so much room in my brain. So I want to really say that that's well worth checking out. It's up there with one of the books that you will really benefit from reading, I think, along with some of the other self-help books like The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Psycho-Cybernetics and stuff like that, and Freakonomics. You know, any understanding that you have of the bigger systems of the world is going to be a good thing. So yeah, that utopia for realists is very, very interesting, and reminded me of something that I heard about a while back but needed to get into my head. River's looking pretty normal, although there's a tree down there that sort of dammed the river, so that could be interesting at some point in the spring. We'll see whether we can get any footage of baby trout like I did last year. So yeah, it turns out that Richard Nixon, of all people, was planning to introduce a basic minimum income and was dissuaded by a report from the 1850s where they tried it, and then the 1800s, or sometime, 1810, I think, because it was 150 years prior to him doing it. So in 1969, Richard Nixon was going to bring in a bill to the Senate that would give the poorest people in America a chunk of money every year, not as a benefit but as a kind of like no strings attached economic boost. And it ties into a whole bunch of other things I wanted to talk about. Universal basic income is a bloody good idea, only if it can be implemented in the right way, and a concept of capping prices for basic needs, so that money isn't immediately caused to evaporate as soon as it's issued. So the idea of basic minimum income, or basic universal income, or just universal basic income, or UBI, it's known as a lot of different things, but the idea is that the government gives you a chunk of money as a dividend on the gross domestic product of the country that you live in. So you get a share in your country's success. That seems fair. It also seems like communism to a lot of people, but as an individual in that country, you produce wealth. People are wealth, and capitalism for a very long time now has been scooping off that extra value in a very unfair way. So you get situations where the CEO of a company earns thousands of times more than somebody that works on the factory floor that's actually creating stuff, whereas the CEO is coming up with ideas and attending meetings and stuff like that. And what they do is they try to squeeze the maximum amount of profit for the paperwork AI that is the corporation. So yes, it's a cool thing. And they were going to introduce it in America, almost, to people. I mean, it wasn't universal back then, it was to the poorest 30 or 40% of people would get a grant of about $1,200, which in today's money is about $10,000 a year. Now, if you can imagine that $10,000 a year, well, or slightly less or slightly more, would mean that more people could do more sensible hours and there's a better work-life balance. And when they've tried it out, they find that people don't just stop working. That was the argument against the welfare state. They tend to carry on working, but they tend to work a more sensible number of hours. Children get to go to school because they don't play truant because they're home. Parents have enough time to do stuff, and lots of other cool stuff, So it ends up saving money. And back in the early 1900s, Gerald Ford, not Gerald Ford, that was the president, Henry Ford, the industrialist, creator of the Model T, gave his workers a massive pay rise. I think it was something like $5 a day, whereas the average daily rate was, and he jokingly said it was so that his workers could afford his cars. And it actually made a massive amount of difference. The workers were way more productive, they felt more invested in the company, they felt they were being paid fairly, and productivity went up, way, way up. And he described the massive doubling of his workers' pay rate as the best cost-saving exercise that Ford had ever undertaken. Considered he was a eugenicist and quite an unpleasant sort of a chap, like even evil corporate industrialists can see the value in this. There's just this weird attitude. If people are invested in their country, and they found that, not only do people feel more connected, they feel that their country's doing well, there's a rise in general worker income. People do things like get educated. The level of education of your country's people goes up. People try stuff, people travel, people do things that make them generally more valuable. People are wealth. This is the thing. It's even, look, I know I keep going on about this, but it's even hard for me to see it. When I look at some people and I look at the short-sighted of people that I work with and that I see in the street and that I'm in enclosed confines with, when I interact with people, I do see, not every time, not even half the time, but occasionally you see someone that cannot think beyond the now. And I think that's a product of, the system that we have in place at the moment. There is no belief in tomorrow, there is no belief in an outcome. There is only, because that's what being poor does to you. You're focused on paying your rent, getting enough to eat, fulfilling some kind of base need. And it's said that poverty has actually the same effect on the human brain as alcoholism and dementia. Extreme poverty can almost look like an effective drop in IQ points of about 40 IQ points. So extreme poverty will do it to you. So yeah, that was interesting. 1969, Richard Nixon tries to introduce it and is then persuaded not to by one of his aides who produces a piece of work based on a similar experiment in the 1800s. And decides, I mean, how different would America look like? That would mean there had been a 50-year precedent of universal basic income in America, which is a world leader in the way societies work, like it or not. Because of the media output, it would be a more common idea. And I've been told that people don't want unearned income, but I was told that by people that had shares and trust funds and interest-paying bank accounts and stuff like that and savings. So they were earning unearned income all the time, and they were hypocritically saying that poor people didn't want the same options. So yeah, but that's capitalism. Turn this round and put this down, yeah. So yes, It's very, very weird. So that was a good thing. So thank you very much to Zoo Echoes. That's my first thing I wanted to talk about this morning. And the second thing I wanted to talk about was yesterday I said that women made up 51% of the population. Turns out that now, at the current rate of births and stuff like that, there has been a shift, so that it's now the other way around. It's kind of men are 51% of the population and women are 49%, or thereabouts. That doesn't take into account, overall world population, stuff like that. It's a very shaky figure. We can't know. You'd have to count everybody. You'd have to have some kind of AI feed. So but that doesn't take into account people born in, which could be as high as 2% of the population, because it's somewhere between 0.5% and 1.7, 1.8%, depending on where you read the resources. And that led me down a very interesting research path. So I was looking for the numbers to just double check that, in a kind of like, I didn't know this, so I need to know more. No offense to Human, who posted it, so thank you very much for your comment. That comment's always good. So if I'm wrong, tell me. It's okay to be wrong. It's just not okay to be uncurious. So I was curious. So it has to be said that this morning I woke up and I started looking into it. And it sort of threw up things like intersex and transgender people and stuff like that. And so I had a very interesting hour's worth of research this morning thanks to that comment. So if you're interested in intersex, Hans Lindahl, HANSLINDHAL, has done some very, very interesting videos, and I'll endeavour to remember to put a link down below. And and I'll put a link to that audiobook again in case you missed it. We don't have to go trolling back through that. So that's housekeeping dealt with, if you like. So always, it's worth pointing out. But in 2010, I would have been right, and that was, I think, the last time I looked. So I think this is one of those things that changes around quite a bit. It's just not correct right now. As of recording, in a few years' time, it could be different. So in other news, Google announced that they have a quantum computer up and running and doing all kinds of terrifying cryptography work. So thought crime could be a thing, because Google are going to hand that technology straight over to DARPA. We're going to do terrible things with it. I also saw an interesting TED talk on capitalism. And that's got some interesting things in it. The idea that paying people a living, decent, fair wage causes less employment. They put the wage up to $15 an hour as a minimum wage in Seattle. And guess what? Everybody made more money because there was more money in the economy. It's just maybe some CEOs had slightly less money. I'm not entirely sure what the difference is between 100 million and 101 million if you're a CEO of a company in real terms to your personal wealth. It's like a percentage, but you're making a whole bunch of other people about 15 to 20 to 30 in some cases % better off, so they're going to spend money, and if you make a good product they will buy it. So what happened in the restaurant industry is people went out to dinner a bit more often when they worked in restaurants. I personally don't do that, because I find it weird now, somebody bringing food. My staff discount at work goes almost completely unused because it's weird to have your colleagues bring you food in a very service type way. I find it erodes. It just feels odd, so I don't do it. And I can cook, so I don't really see the urge to eat out. Cooking your own food is generally faster. So that was interesting. So I shall see if I can find that TED Talk link. So I'll link you to Hans Lindahl, the TED Talk, and the Utopia book again, because I'm only halfway through it, and it is a very interesting listen. So yeah, it is 6 hours long, so you know, fair's fair. Can't listen to it all in one work shift, because I use my other time to do creative stuff. And even later on when I'm playing Fallout 4, to get used to the controls so I don't look like a complete klutz when I do my streaming or my upload of it, yeah, that's still a productive thing. That's learning in inverted commas, a skill, because I think that you should be able to play Fallout 4 ethically. You know, what would you do? You have the power to change things. I mean, I want to use it as a visualization tool, because yeah, societal collapse is coming, and I don't think anybody's that interested. I mean, the thing that you hear again and again and again and again ad nauseum when people are talking to Extinction Rebellion are, I don't like the way you go about it. And I'm just not qualified. I'm not qualified to be a spokesperson for Extinction Rebellion, because my response would be, you know, good. That's the point. You're supposed to not like it. It's supposed to cause disruption. It's supposed to be difficult for you to comprehend and work out. It's supposed to be a thing. Ooh. I wonder, is it possible to get down there today? Is it possible to walk the other way in the woods? We're not going for too long, because I've got stuff to do today. But is it possible? And I've got work later, so no, it's not possible. There isn't a gentle enough slope for this mud. So yeah. But I think tomorrow morning might be a Woodland Starbucks moment. Oh, here we go. I do not fancy it. But yeah, it is amazing how many hidden bits are in this wood, how many ways you could tuck yourself away in a certain amount of seclusion. You could probably build a dugout out here and no one would ever find it. Like, alien archaeologists 1,000 years from now might be very confused if you left modern technology in a little cave that you dug out of the hillside, buried in a piece of wood that nobody ever walked to. Because people don't go for a walk. They don't. You know, they're not curious. They don't explore. Largely because life's too much of a grind. But yeah. Anyway. So yeah. So it is interesting. Yeah, I mean, I you know, it's supposed to disrupt. And then people are saying, but I was disrupted. It's like, yeah. Sorry. We tried all the other stuff, you know, people suggested, but you could go for a march on a Saturday and then you could bang your drums and you could complain and then no one would listen. And the Extinction Rebellion people are almost universally saying, yeah, I know, we did that. We did it for like 50 years. You know, you've even had people phone into radio shows, especially the James O'Brien show, and say, I've protested. And we didn't do that. And did the shit you were protesting about change? Well, no, it didn't. Then shut the fuck up. You know, I am sorry. It is a downer. And yes, you've been disrupted. Yes, you couldn't walk down the precise street you wanted to walk down. And yes, some businesses lost some money and it cost a lot of police resources. But bear in mind, the police were the aggressors. You know, you can sort of understand how Germany felt in the 1920s. You know, or you can sort of understand how it would be like if you were an invaded nation and not only did another country invade your sovereign soil, let's say, for want of ridiculous argument, Canada invades the United States and then has the bloody temerity to bill the United States for loss of troopers' lives, for loss of equipment and for the expenditure of ammunition that was taken up in order to secure the United States. Now, arguably, the seizing of resources, which is the reason for most wars, would kind of be that, you know. the invading country seeks to make a profit. That was a bit of a clamber. So yeah, it will be like getting a bill from the invading power saying, it cost us an absolute fortune to oppress you. You know, but you know, that's what's happening. The police are arresting people under new powers that they've designed, and now they're chelping about the expenditure of resources. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. And it's possible that they will try and fine the protesters that they arrested while doing a peaceful protest under the Public Order Act. Hippies said things that we didn't like, we were disturbed, so we arrested you. And yeah, and now we'll try and recoup some of our expenses for our hostile act. So yeah, I don't really think that pensioners are really going to cause that much trouble. And if pensioners are willing to go to jail, the obvious question to ask is, well shit, why? You know? Why is that thing so? So yes, it is pretty mind-boggling. But yeah. So, yeah, societal collapse. You might as well enjoy all the technology you can right now. You know? Go nuts. You got 10 years. And that's part of the reason why I think Fallout 4 would be very apt. It's a destroyed civilization that you're trying to rebuild. And good sort of like psychological and mental training. You know, good role play to work your way through something. So yes, that's what I'm going to be doing a little bit later on. I'm going to get myself some breakfast, get this video edited. Hopefully it will be in one piece, which would speed things up amazingly. And yeah. So that was my morning ramble. I don't know how long we've been out here, at least 20 minutes. So as always, thank you for watching, and do take care.